the map, you'll find Koolaree dock is about 7 miles east of Nelson on the highway, where you catch a boat across the lake to find the campsite, which is on the south shore of the west arm of Kootenay Lake. The mode of transportation is by boat. This is a work party. Lyall Armstrong there and Merv and Rowlands. Our picture of the famous creek through the camp. Our water supply is, we have our own private creek coming through the camp, and the water's being tested every summer, and it's very high quality. So we have no fear about contamination with our water supply. And believe it or not, you can dangle a fly in there and get a small fish occasionally. Our pipeline runs up through the creek, about 800 feet of pipeline. And we have a barrel installed, which the water is filtered into that barrel, and is quite adequate for supplying the camp. This looks like the famous soapbox derby and trail. It's coming down Telephone Hill, down past Knox Church. I think this was the only year that they had it. I think the Gyro Club were responsible for this, and there was an accident, and somebody didn't get out of the way and they got hurt. That was the end of the soapbox derbies. The reason that's in there is because several of the boys who come to camp had vehicles in there, so we just thought we'd leave it right in. Some of the gyros who were responsible. The building there, you may not recognize it, but that is Carberry's funeral home. Now we're back out at the camp again now, and that's Timberall. They're working on the extension of the camp kitchen. At that work party that was out there, there were fellows like Walter Smythe was working. He might appear in there somewhere, but the kitchen was enlarged and by about 20 feet. And at the same time, the roof of the lodge was resurfaced. Art Van was the man in charge of the carpenter work. A very valuable service too, to have chaps like that who would come out to the camp. And there's always many willing hands too. And that is Mrs. Sally Nelson, who was the cook, and Mrs. Downey, Mrs. Ivervan, all top cooks. Funny, interesting thing is that some of our future directors also ended up being cooks at the camp. This looks as if the boys are on a hike there, up to the top of the mountain. There's two areas that straight up from the ball field is considered the senior high. And there's cairns up there with the names of people that have arrived up there, are stowed in it. And then there's another cairn across the other side of the creek, known as the Intermediate Boys Camp. Also, there are containers there. And whenever people have gone up there, they have taken the trouble to write their own names and left them up there, and also brought back the names of those that they found were up there. This is an obstacle race in the camp. In going through these pictures, you may see a similarity of the events, but if you look at the boys, you'll find that it's either a junior boys camp or a senior boys camp, and the events that are put on are usually arranged by the boy cabin leaders, not necessarily by the camp staff. This is known as the Camp Classic, and all the boys are in one cabin are in that boat, and they have to take it out around the dock and into the shore on the other side. This is an obstacle swimming course. The local boys found a real challenge when we started getting the Japanese boys from New Denver and Lemon Creek. When they came to camp, they were super water rats, swimmers, divers. They were a very big asset to the camp. One well-known name, John Tanaka, I think he's a social service worker now in Grand Forks. I think that's probably him walking out there now to get the flag off the end of the pole. And then there was a Hoishima and Matsuma. This is looking after their cabins, getting their cabins cleaned up and ready for inspection. Each cabin seemed to have a different method of doing it. Some would take everything out of the cabin just to sweep the floor and then make the beds up outside and then put them all back in again. This is another obstacle course. Learning to live together and having a lot of fun at the same time was the main object out there. And some of these events, such as this broad jumping there, they would make a record. That might happen in the first 2 days of camp, and then at the end of camp they'd go and see if they'd improved. Here's another one of those classic boat races. This is a case of we're trying to get coordination. If you watch, you'll find some are not paddling in the same direction as the other fella in there. The cabins, you can see there double two-tier bunks in there, and there's about 12 boys to a cabin normally, and in an extra large camp we even had 14 in a camp, and they're That means some of them stowed their springs up on the rafters. The day starts out with morning jerks out of the cabin, just do a few stretches, and then it's get washed up for ready for the day, and or go for the polar bear swim. And the funny thing is, over the years, I don't think there's ever been a camp that there hasn't been a polar bear swim every morning. And a few hardy souls will go in. That's the that totem pole that you'll see quite frequently in those pictures there. It was started from an old telegraph pole that was dropped out up on the railway track, and Ken May, who was out there who built the hut that the kitchen staff live in, he started to fashion it into a totem pole. Along came the war, and it got relegated to standing up against the end of the lodge. And after the war, some of the senior campers decided to finish it. Mrs. Gray, there's camp nurse. I think this is an attempt to move some stones out of one of the walkways, and they found the rocks were as big as the mountain. Consequently, they're still there. There's a scene down on the dock. That red hat belongs to Lyall Armstrong. It's funny how something can be attached to a fellow, and you can, wherever it comes along, that's the guy who owns that hat. As much time as possible was given to the waterfront. Alice Gray and her sister. Tiger Milburn. Jackson. Steed got the better of those fellas and he didn't go in. A little fishing going on. Oh, these are some cards, Christmas cards or birthday cards that were appropriate to go into the picture. Well, this is digging the cesspit, and that was the biggest chore we ever had there. Look at the size of that rock we were taking out of there. And we dug that hole. It was, let's just say, 10 feet in all sides. And then we lined it with cedar poles, and then put a roof on it. And it's been in service now for 25, 30 years. What's there? Oh, this is 1953. This is what we call the Potts Navy. Ian Potts, a high school teacher who was one of the leaders out there, had the boys make these sailboats out of bits of shingles and paper and masts and rudders, and there was quite a fleet, and set them loose about right after lunch one afternoon and just let them go, and about some of them collapsed almost immediately, but about 4:30, when the flunky had to go across the lake for some supplies, he found 4 of them sailing merrily down through the Narrows. How far they actually went, we do not know. But it was quite a sight to see all those little paper sails going down there. Of course, in the girls' camp, they did a similar thing. They had little bits of bark and put candles on them. They set them out at night, and some of those went down the lake 2 or 3 miles before they were tipped over. And these boys here were training for Red Cross swimming events. You'll see the different ones trying events, floating and plunge for distance, or just floating. And then the unfortunate thing was, when the examiner came out from trail, it was a dull day, and he dove into the water to give a demonstration of what he wanted them to do, and climbed right out and said, "That's it, it's too cold," after these fellows had all qualified, but he wouldn't examine them. And this particular race, the leaders decided to see if they could better the time of the boys going around there, and of course I think they clowned a bit and they upset their boat, but it gave us a new feature in the camp. Upset the boat and then right it, get back into it and bring it ashore. And it turned out to be a very, very worthwhile program. Here we have the girls' camps, and they would go to different places around the camp for their study groups, and this bunch chose to go down and sit on the rocks. And the leaders in these camps, there would be Mrs. Kettlewell, there'd be Mrs. Kettlewell, Carol Proudfoot, or Ray Wellick, and Minnie Fleming, and Mrs. Nichols, and Helen Peachy. All these women served in the camps at various times to serve the different girls' groups, different age groups. And these girls had programs of their own, and during the war they had knitting needles out there, and they would knit little squares to make afghans or lap mats to send to the hospitals overseas. And as I said before, some of these leaders even ended up as cooks in the kitchen, like Audrey Stevenson and Nettie Bennett and Marion Allen and Jean Burt. These people all did various things at the camp. And Frances Moran was a very, very influential camp director in camps, like programs such as you see right here is one of Frances' camps. That's Frances right there. And many of these girls have come back. Same thing with the boys. They've come back and did their stint as cabin leaders, helped any way they can with the camp. And there's so many, it would be almost impossible to name everybody as we went through these pictures here. I think Mrs. Harrison was in that picture. Mrs. Fawcett. She was there as a camp nurse. I don't know. There's Dooley Mary. And Audrey Stevenson. And this is in the girls' camp, and the girls used to have a clown day, and Bob Rowlands was the flunky, and I don't know what he was supposed to be in that, but I think he was a bear. But these girls loved to dress up, and they would come to the camp prepared to dress up for certain occasions. They'd all got something in mind that they were going to pull off during the course of the camp. I noticed in this picture Mrs. Downey who was still very much interested in the camp. There's Carol Proudfoot is in that picture. And the interesting thing about the girls, you'll see there's no canvas on the side of the cabins there, and they would hide it. Come rain or whatever, they just didn't want their cabins closed in. But now, unfortunately, modern day says close them in. And this is cleaning off a roof, getting it ready to either reshingle or repaper. There's Jack Steed and Ericson from Salmo, Murray from Nelson. That looks a picture looking in around the campfires circle. Well, these boys were pointing up to the top of the mountain these are senior boys, and they're going up to the cairn. And we often hear of people getting lost in the mountain, but one thing we can instruct them on this mountain is that there's a creek on one side and there's a ravine on the other. And if you find yourself dipping into one side or the other, you're off the track. Go straight up between the two and you'll come up to the cairns up on the top. And up there you can leave your name and also make a record of those names that are already there and bring them back with you. When you're up on the top there, you have a beautiful view right across the lake to the Kokanne peaks. Did I time that right? There's the Kokanne peaks across the lake. And weather-wise, you can go up there on a beautiful clear day like that, and then when you get up there, all of a sudden a storm blows across and you're soaked by the time you get back down again. But that doesn't happen as a regular thing. That little fellow there is Gary Van. The girl in that boat was Dave Stone's daughter, who refused to talk, and we did everything we possibly could to try to get her to speak, but she finally grew out of it. Which was quite a concern to both in the school and to us out at the camp. I think these fellows are working on handcrafts. There's a fellow making a belt. That is Keith Jamieson making that belt. And since that picture is taken, he's gone through university as a civil engineer, specializing in sanitation, and has spent all his time for the church out in India, helping the people find good wells and water. And he's now back working back east. The church. That looked like Billy Fraser up there. I wish I could remember his name. That turtle turned up in camp. We don't know where it came from or that, but they boys had it there for a while and they finally let it go. When you see a mob scene like that, it could be. Now there's an interesting picture. That little bit of railway track there, that is completely grown in now. The vegetation is. There's Joe German. Looks like Cal Moon's hat there. There's one of the Japanese boys walking the log to get the flag off the end of it. I think he got it. Or did he? The boats you see there, the rowboats, were donated to the camp by the service clubs of the area. Rotary Club, Kinsman Club, Gyro Club, Nelson clubs. The boats before that were boats built by Mr. Hollett, Hedley Hollett's father. And those boats that you were seeing there were built by the Japanese boat builders in Vancouver, in Nelson rather. There, he got the flag. That's Matsuma Oshima. We may not get a chance to see it, but in one of the girls' camps, they had 6 different nationalities all taking part in the church service. This is Nancy Appleton, the nurse's little girl. An idea of that. Boys heading back to Nelson after a week work party. Sometimes we had some very, very rough trips on the weekends, having to bring the boat back to Nelson, or even going up to the camp. And there'd be so much driftwood in the lake, you'd have one boy sitting out in the bow watching for logs. That little Appleton girl, I remember the day that she and her mother arrived in camp, the launch was out in the middle of the lake there for 3/4 of an hour because it was so rough. And they just stayed out there going up and down the middle, didn't dare try to pull one side or the other. This shows the low water. There's quite a rocky ledge out in front of the camp, and it becomes quite scary when you're there in camp and the water's up and you see these people with their boats come barreling in there, and you're waving and trying to flag them down, but they pay no attention. We're very, very lucky that we haven't had the bottom ripped out of some of the boats. Oh, and this is the famous day when they brought a bulldozer in there to level the ball field, and this fellow that's running it was not the official bulldozer operator, and we didn't know that at the time. And while we were away at lunch, we heard it start up, and when we came back, he had wiped out quite a number of trees out of the corner of the ball field, and also 4 or 5 telegraph poles, and he decided to get out of there in a hurry, and telling us that the operator would be out on Monday. They would level the field for us. And this is that was 1951, and the chaps working there is Merv Rowlands and Lyall Armstrong and Lefty Wilkinson, Ken Dimmick, and there was Jill Dimmick and Carol Falder, Margaret Marion Jackson, and they were all out there for the weekend, but they didn't expect to be cleaning up all this brush. But that was, but we did get the ball field level, but it was quite a chore to bring that, to get that bulldozer in. It had to be brought in on a barge, and we had to get it in at a certain level of the lake so they could get it off and drive it up into the ball field. And we've often thought we'd like to have it back again, but we want to make sure that the right operator's with it. But time marches on and there's no telegraph poles. That is the remains of cabin 1 that were the only fire we ever had in the camp, and very fortunate that there was nobody in that cabin. And but we learned a few lessons about what had to be done to look after it, and the response of the boys in the camp was terrific, so that the fire didn't spread any further than that one cabin. And then we had to have that cabin 2 days later for a girls' camp coming in. And there's Tom Calhoun, who came out from Rossland, and there's Reverend Bill Moore, and we organized the boys, and so there was a cabin rebuilt in 2 days. And the boys went around. There was only, I think, about 6 hammers in camp. The boys had a knack of hiding a hammer, so as any free time they could go over and pound nails. Either that or they had to haul lumber. But it was a real show of cooperation on the part of the kids in the camp to get that cabin rebuilt. Fraser, Bill Fraser, Eddie Nickel, Gordon Fraser, that's one of the rare scenes looking up. This is the pile driver that's in there then. This is after the war, and it was brought in to put some new piles in, and it was, the government had got a new PT boat from down at the coast, that had been in the South Pacific. It had 3 125 horsepower motors on it, and they figured it would be very helpful in moving this barges and that around. The only thing was it was too much power, and it only made one run out as far as Balfour and back, and the natives all along the shore no more. It was too much of a wash. And even in the camp, in the bay at the camp, when they were leaving, they put the one motor in reverse and the other ahead, turned around on a dime, and it took 2 weeks for the mud to settle in the bottom of the bay. It was one of our Japanese boys. John Tanaka. I think he was 5x5. Color. Dell Johnson, Reverend Dell Johnson of Nakusp. He was a good scout, and it was funny. What happened here was that he was going to go home, had to go home, take his service at Nakusp, and for some reason or other, the kids all lined up in a long single line, right from the lodge right down to the dock. Every one of them said goodbye, bye to him. It almost sounded as though they wanted to get rid of him, but that wasn't the case at all. He was a real good fellow. Now I think we've got into a girls' camp again. The things with the real difference in the camps is that the flunkies were the go-betweens, would tell us what went on in the girls' camp, and their singing was entirely different to ours. They sing much faster, much louder, and they laugh more, and they really have a ball. As I say, they come prepared for this. They bring all sorts of costumes with them for dress-up periods. Once they've been and got what it's going to be like, what may happen. One of the directors, Marion Allen, she's now living on Vancouver Island, was the director, and she turned up one day for their dress-up day, Jolly Green Giant, and she was green from head to foot, arms, legs, and that. And she certainly proved the point, Jolly Green Giant. This is Clarence Ross. This is low water getting into the camp. To open up the camp, you can see the rocks out there, and they had to lighten the boat and then pole their way in. Hector McDonald. What are these fellows? This working on the totem pole. This Donald Daly. I think this is the totem pole they created themselves. That Noel Cutler. Oh, they're peeling potatoes there. He is anyway. Derek Fraser. I think he's a lawyer now. And this is, as I say, the sports day is teaching them to do things together, coordinate. It's just, each one's got one handle of the wheelbarrow. And the thing is to go the race without dumping it. They also did the same thing with the boy riding on it. This could be about 1953, 54. Looks like intermediate boys. There's Peter Young. That's another obstacle course. There was a tree blew down. They just decided that was a good thing to have it in the way. Have to climb through that. There's a deer. I think in this particular scene here, there were at least five deer roaming all around the camp at that particular time, and we'd got the boys trained not to scare them or throw things at it. They wanted pictures to just stay put and let the deer come to them. And this is under Norman McClucky's direction, making paper masks, mache masks. And as a result of making those paper mache masks, Bob Valance decided to make a boat, a sailboat. And he successfully did it. Sail complete with sails. And there'll be a picture of him as one of the masks there. There's another one. Norman McClucky is a leader and director, brought various innovations in here. This is Bob Valance. We call him the old boat builder. I don't know where he got the wig from, but he's got a wig on, sort of a corncob pipe, and he's working on his boat there. The kids are all watching him. He went on to be a public relations man for the BA Oil. But one of the other innovations that Norman did, he had the kids bring, he got a bunch of big light globes, and he made paper mache balls around them and then broke the globes inside, so there were rattles for orchestra. Those big life jackets were the same kind of life jackets that the American Navy had on the fellows in the South Pacific, and we acquired 6 of them. And the idea wasn't, here again, back to Bob Valance, the old boatman making his sailboat. Those life jackets turned out to be, there was one of them was waterlogged. The poor kid that got into it, he struggled to get into the thing, and we wondered why it was taking him so long until we got hold of it. We could hardly lift it. It was so heavy. They were very cumbersome things. That's a fraternity meeting at Doran Hamilton. Gordon Harris is Monty Smith, now living in Alberni. Bob Rowlands, who is a professor in the University of Illinois. And this is another one of Bob Valance's escapades. Got that pole there and he cuts the top off the pole. But he also showed us how to drive a 15-inch spike. instead of taking big hefty swings at it, he just little short taps, and he drove that spike all the way into the framework. There's Ken Dimmick. There's Mr. Calhoun and Mr. Ferguson, who wrote there on the, I think, the 25th anniversary of the camp. That'd be 1955. This is the building of the hospital building, and this building was designed so that if we had to have somebody live the winter, we could winterize that building. And everybody who was out there working at that when the picture was being taken decided they had to get in the act somewhere or other, whether they were doing anything useful or not, but just go up and hammer a nail here or there. Here's the Pop Smiley taking some of the visitors back home after that was a very, very good boat. Campfire, there's always a spot for a million memories. For every camper that was out there, a different type of This is rather an interesting thing here. These fellows are preparing, this is part of the sports day, and the leaders that figured this out, it must have been their turn for peeling potatoes the next day, because they've got the kids going to peel potatoes, and part of the trick is they have to carry the dishpan full of water up, and they're judged on the amount of water they have in the pan before they start. And then this is similar to the wheelbarrow race with the drum on it, only they got a boy riding on it this time. As I say, the fellows think up their own ideas for the next sports day, and no two sports days are exactly alike. This is a junior boys camp. So this is Bill Fraser, I think Joe German clowning with the fire extinguishers, playing it on one another, walk right up to it. There's jousting off a log. The interesting thing here is that the fellow that you least expect to win it is the guy that usually ends up by winning it. You always figure the other guy's a rugged guy, he's going to knock him off right away. You get some good campfires. And there's a lot of memories come from around those campfires there. Dr. Billy Williamson of Vancouver here. There's Donald Daly and Joe German there. Dr. Billy Williamson was quite a musician, and he liked to play the little organ we had. Makes his own compositions. Looks like camp coming in. This looks like my backyard. Time out. the neighbor's dog. I didn't ever need a dog. Oh, this is the boys rigged to sail on this boat. Oh no, that's coming in at low water, and they have to pole in. They couldn't row it in. They poled it in and dodged the rocks in the bottom. It looks like myself doing it. A little clowny. That's the Koolaree Dam. It's quite an interesting story to that Koolaree Dam. All the bank on the north side, they couldn't control it. It was always sloughing down. And one of the youngest engineers on the whole project suddenly said to him, "Why can't you freeze it?" And they drove pipes down and froze the whole bank to hold it in place while they built the dam. This must be a private campsite. That's not the camp. That looks like the going down into the caves at Lewis and Clarkson Caves. You get on that vehicle and you rode across the side of the mountain. These university students looking after it said, "Don't worry, we've never had anybody roll off here yet," and about 2,000 feet down into the bottom of the valley. They take you over to the mouth of the caves. Well, this is in Yellowstone, this one. Bears on the side of the road. I was talking to somebody the other day who was down at Yellowstone and quite annoyed because the Old Faithful was only at a low ebb. And I said, "Well, you're supposed to stay there for an hour or so and you just go up to full height." It doesn't go full height every time. It costs money to go in there now. Tariff, these. And even the tour bus, if they found the tour bus was just going to use the road to go through, they would stop them or a big fee just to drive through if you weren't going to stop at the big resort center. Bears everywhere. Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. That's the place to go if you want to see eagles. Look through that valley there, practically every tree's got an eagle sitting on it. This is there's the falls. That's very high country. That's why they had the big fire there a year ago, was it? They just let it burn. And you notice here, this is in this one place, these cars all got a different license. I think there was 23 cars in around there. There's my, that's my car, highway. Illinois. Notice the bears, you have to be fully aware of bears down there. I was cleaning fish, and I said to my wife, I said, if a bear comes around, yell, let me know. Next thing I heard her say, get out of here, get out of here. There was a bear right beside her on the other side of the car. I was still cleaning the fish. The bear left. It's quite a canyon, that. A lot of people go down there, go through Yellowstone, and they don't come up to the north end of the park, and that's why they miss this. There's all the potholes at the north end of the park, and we were in there one night, and the scouts were coming back from one of their scout jamborees. And the bear got at their tent. It was quite a thing. Good old leaders sleeping in a station wagon, the kids in the tent. And they wouldn't believe the little kid describing what went on with all their pots and pans outside. That's one of the waterways that the river rafters have not tried yet. So long since I've looked at this. That might be an eagle on the top one of the pinnacles there. When I first got it, I could discern them quite well. This is the north end of Yellowstone with all the various potholes. Quite an array of color. We're back in the camp. That's Galetly's dog. That's Jack Galetly there. This was a work party. Oh, this is building the cement block chimney down east. And these kids bringing these cement blocks over, they figured they could handle them quite easily. They soon found out how heavy those blocks. And then when John said, "Well, bring them up to the roof to me," and they had to carry them up the ladder, they soon found out that bricklaying wasn't as easy a job as it looked, especially when you were using that size bricks. The year of that's Jack Kendrick there. Oh, this is back to that hospital building where the whole works of them had to get into the picture somehow or other, so they're all hammering on the same piece of wood. And this is this is when the high water took this raft end of the float right up to cabin 3, and the kids dug out underneath it and put poles in, got it on rollers, and then that's where they all climbed on it and rode it back down into position again. That would be in about the mid-50s. This is got to drink a cup of water without using your hands. This is an obstacle race. And this is in the girls' camp when they put on a puppet show. The girls made their own puppets and put on their own show. It was very, very clever production, actually. Well, this is the building of cabin 7, and we didn't have a level there. We had a meat pan full of water. That was the level we had. This is the girls' camp, and this is the boys re-roofing one of the cabins. some of the kids didn't mind doing those for those in those days, because the thing was that they weren't getting a chance to do anything like that at home, and they learned an awful lot. Like when they're putting the shingles on, one fellow insisted on, didn't matter which way the shingles were, they could go on thick end up if they wanted them. Well, if you wanted to make a rustic roof, you could do that if you knew how. But we didn't want a rustic roof. I think this is the umpire of a ball game at the fraternity camp getting dunked. But a few others went in beside him. Keith Benson. Yeah, Keith is the one that was arguing about shingles go on anyway. Fish. That was the year that you could go out in front of the lake there and get fish almost any time you wanted to. There's my little one on against theirs. And now there's a ban on fishing. That year, there's the orchestra in that cabin. There's Magison with his guitar, and who had the violin, and there's one with a clarinet there. I think the violin was the boy from Nelson. These would be around 1956 or 57. Another one of those boat races. If they cooperated, they could go around from one side of the dock to the other in a matter of less than 2 minutes. If they didn't cooperate, they might be all afternoon. The water's pretty high at that spot. Jousting. This is some more handcraft. This fellow's birthday, one of the leaders' birthday. So they decided to give him a tour of the camp. All the high spots of the camp. And gosh, I was thinking of his name the other day. They have a place out at Harrop. His sister's married to one of the they finished up by ending up down on the dock and rolled him off his chariot into the water. Well, this is after we got the big fire hose. That's the one that was stolen on us. The boys raised $600 to buy that pump. And it was really a powerful pump. And it was stolen right out of the brick storehouse. We even trained the girls to use it. If they didn't know how to hold it, one kid couldn't hold that nozzle. It was so powerful. I think this is the girls were trying this formation. So now we're back switching from one camp to the other too fast here. Volleyball is still a very popular game. And softball, every kid has a chance to do his thing. I saw one cabin one time went through the whole cabin. They were losing. They hadn't got a pitcher. And this one little fellow is just out from England, and they hadn't tried him. And they said, "Oh no, he wouldn't know how to pitch it." And he turned out to be the best pitcher they had. That's what the discoveries you make. Softball games in the early days, it used to before that bulldozer wrecked the ball field, that was home plate up in that area. One of the things was that if you could hit a ball over cabin 2, that was good for a chocolate bar. Until somebody decided to put it right through as Norman McClucky, he was director of a camp. You know, a retired school teacher in Vancouver. Well, this is the very high water. This is where the boat comes right up in around over the campfire. And right up to cabin 3. There's looking out to the lake from the campfire circle. There's the dock. People wouldn't hardly believe that the dock rises to the top of those pilings. The pilings are so tall. And there it is. Of course, it doesn't come up like that now. The lake is under stricter control. And this is over at Chapel Beach, where they built a barbecue pit over there, and here's the barbecue pit underwater. So they decided that was a good time to paint the boards up on top of the pilings. If you look across the lake there, you see Shady Lane cabins. You can just see the tops of them out of the water. There's the campfire circle. There's the campfire seats. I think that's the highest the water has ever come, and that would be about 56, I think, 56 or 7. There's Stephen Drew with his boat, decides to go in around by the campfire. And then he was right up into the steps at the back of the cookhouse. They made a survey all around the lake, you know, as to how high the water might come by the treaty, you know, the Columbia Treaty. This is the Shady Lane cabin. It's underwater. And there is a mark on the beach, but they never did anything about it because the water has never been up there since. They went around to see how many buildings they would have to move if the water was allowed to be maintained at that level. That means there's pretty nearly 20 feet of water off the dock when it's up at that level. Well, the girls' camp. Let's see who pick out the directors in there. Unfortunately, no, can't name them. There's a BC flag. One of the boys insisted that flag had to be, I don't know where he got it from, but he put it up. And there's the totem pole that was created by the boys themselves. Oh, there's a girl with an accordion. That's something new in the camp. And this is the girls girls are in a parade. Now that's the old bell tower. They have a going back to the belt. Yeah, there it is there. The bell tower, we had a big CPR bell rigged up on top of it. Or at least it wasn't CPR, it was off a logging locomotive from the old town of Lumberton logging mill. And we had it there, and it was a big brass thing. And in the last few years, it has disappeared and it was stolen. And I hate to say this, but I'm reasonably sure that it is the bell that is now sitting on top of the new Redfish Creek schoolhouse. Somebody up there made a hero of himself, donating this bell, which he swore up and down he got off a CPR locomotive. And he didn't know what to do with it, so he donated it to the schoolhouse. But at that time, they were rounding up all sorts of brass and everything else. And I think this was just too big a chunk of brass for them to dispose of without question when they took that. As I say, it's the same thing with the big fire pump we lost. When we lost things like that, it became difficult because the police would say, well, if you get a sight on it, we'll do something about it. But if you can't get a sight on it, we can't do anything about it. They took 2 canoes out of the storehouse, and they were found buried in the bush down at Nelson. This is another view of the Kokanne Peaks. Some of the things that have been taken from the camp were real treasures. There's about a 15 or 16 inch totem replica of one of the totems. It was carved by one of the boys in appreciation of the camp, and we used it for 20 years for table awards, and all of a sudden it disappeared. And the boy that carved that became one of the first heart transplant doctors in all Canada, and he's now a heart specialist in Vancouver. He's a Japanese boy from Greenwood. Some of the things we certainly would like to get our hands on again. That's not in the camp, that's for sure. That's somebody's garden. That's not mine. Oh, that's, I know, that's Seattle. It's World Fair of Seattle. That garden, that's my niece's garden in Seattle. That's one of the first places I became aware of what is happening in the modern age. And they had all these high-skilled technical things with all the instructions on what this switch operated, what that switch operated. And I can well remember this man standing there reading these down, and he's telling his son, he said, "Oh, don't touch, son, don't touch, I'll tell you exactly what to do." And in the meantime, the kid had got all the switches going. Everything on the board was in motion. And that's down at the Juanita Dam. Those buckets there. This is the first totem pole that was carved out at the camp. Here's a girl sewing. That's see if I can name some of them off. The girls in this group they had a drama class, and some of the things they were doing there were dramatization. And you're supposed to figure out what it was all about. Oh, this is kangaroo court. Punished this kid for something he did. He has to push that ball all the way across the ball field with his head. That wasn't one of my fiendish ideas. Oh, this is Settlers and Indians or something. The game the kids used to play in right after supper in the evening. Almost like touch football with a towel sticking out the back of their pants. Oh, this looks like Cal Moan's parade. Cal was the chief of the camp. That would be early 60s. And there's Titsworth with his bagpipes. They paraded all around the camp. Each cabin was to itself. And then they had a grand march past. There's the march past. That's Calmon. At times the kids got into quite the spirit of the thing. They made quite a parade out of it. Oh, this is one of those I guess he did go under it. There's a storm breaking. This could be anywhere. East Kootenay, Banff. It looks like over near Fernie. Oh yeah, that's Lizard Mountain over at Fernie. Boy, campsite there, and you get an electrical storm running along the top of those peaks there. It is really something. That's where they, on that mountain, they go ski up there, and they can have a ski run back into town 13 miles. Don't know that mountain. Well, that could be anywhere. Oh, I know where that is. That's Rogers Pass. Oh, those other mountains could be in around Banff. That's Naramata. The dock at Naramata. That didn't look like Anscombe. It looked like a coast vessel. Got me puzzled here. That's a trip up the coast with little tiny fishing vessels. That's a trip we took on a passenger freighter cruise, and that'd be in 1969. There's a remarkable picture there. See those big vehicles parked on there, and to see them unload those things at different places along the way. That was one of the best trips I ever had. Went from Vancouver to Stewart, and we stopped in at fishing villages and logging camps, Bella Coola, Prince Rupert, Stewart. That's Mount Waddington. Now there they are lifting one of the little boats off the deck. You see those little fishing boats out there until you see them down in. This is very interesting. See these fellows ride around, and they have to change those shivs according to what they're lifting. When you see the two arms operating two, see the big truck on the side there, they lift that on. There's another boat going to be put on. You'd hardly think that there's a tractor going on. And it's swung between those two booms, and they have to coordinate them to. The interesting thing was that the men on the trip just took things for granted like that. Oh well, they're just going to lift that off. But the women, they lined up and they just watched that right to the left move. They had to see how it was done. Look at this thing going on. And when they're not doing that, when they're between ports, they're in boats and boats and chairs painting those masts and arms with rollers. It's really something to see one of those put in position. That service is no longer on the coast. I think we were about the last trip that it ever made. Boy, the meals were good on that. I put on a pound a day. Now, what was the year that Nancy Green won? This was the year after. Yeah, well, this is 69. That was my first year that I was retired. Because every time you saw a glacier, somebody come up and say, "You think Nancy Green could handle that place?" I said, "Of course she could." Yeah, that was it. I didn't know that was tied in with these films. I thought that was on a separate reel of its own. There's a ferry from Vancouver. Yeah, there's a picture of the guy's painting. And this is in going from Sydney over to Anacortes, and that boat came out and turned around and came sailing right up in behind us. Oh, this is back in the camp. One of the hikes. This is the girls' camp breaking up. There's Dooley Mary's husband standing on the dock. He was supposed to be seeing that all these girls' bundles were adequately tied for him to go home, and he gave up in disgust.